Okay, my friends, welcome, good evening. Welcome to part 2, Talmud for Beginners, the course behind the scenes at Mount Sinai. This is class 2, Objection, Your Honor. Hope you're all feeling well. I want to begin by, first of all, you can download the source sheet. There's the link on the Facebook or in the description on the YouTube. I'll put it in the comments again in case you don't see it. Okay. I want to begin by first telling a story that happened just a few days ago where I was contacted by somebody who I don't know, or I didn't know until then, in a different country, and he watched our last Talmud class, the first class in this course. And he contacted me, and he said, you know, Rabbi, first of all, I joined the class. Thank you so much. He enjoyed it, which I was happy that he did. And he says, you know, this Talmud deep, it's powerful, it's exciting, it's energetic. There's never-ending layers of ways to study and questions to ask and depth. And he really wrote beautifully. And in the end, he said, so I don't understand. He's Jewish. He said, I grew up. He's middle-aged now. I never was exposed, never heard of the Talmud. I asked my friends. They don't know about it. And it's so geschmack. He didn't use that word, but why do people study it more? It's so wonderful. I'm still working on an answer. I don't really know. Maybe you'll be curious in the comments, or you can let me know the answer. It should be studied more. It's a fascinating text. It's the bedrock of Jewish thought in many ways. And so whatever I can do to help disseminate and help you access the Talmud, I'd love to help, and that's what we're doing now. So we're starting class 2. Even if you didn't make it to class 1, that's okay. You'll still understand everything we're going to study tonight. A bit of background about one issue that we were dealing with in last class, and that will be a segue into the text that we're going to begin with today. In last class, we raised a question that the Talmud in Tractate Shabbat 87b asked the following question. It's trying to figure out the chronology of what happened, when happened, things at Har Sinai at Mount Sinai. So it said that we know the Jews arrived at Sinai on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the first of Nisan. We know that. We don't know which day of the week that was, but we know the date. We know the Torah was given on Shabbat. The question is, what date of the month of Sivan was the Torah given? And there was a dispute between two opinions, as there always is. The rabbis, the majority opinion, and Rabbi Yossi. The rabbis taught us, and this was based on many proofs that we discussed last week, that the Jews arrived at the foot of Mount Sinai on Monday, which was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and that means on Shabbat, when the Torah was given, it was the 6th of Nisan. Rabbi Yossi argues, and he says the Jews arrived at Sinai on Sunday, which was Rosh Chodesh, the 1st of Sivan, and the Torah was given on Shabbat, which was the 7th of Sivan. So was the Torah given on the 6th or the 7th of Sivan? That is a dispute, but we know it was given on Shabbat, and we explained last time why such a significant day for the Torah to be given. Now, I'm skipping a little bit in the Talmud text, introducing our text today, and the Talmud spends a couple pages bringing proofs back and forth, trying to bring a supportive text to support the opinion of the rabbi, supportive text to support the opinion of Yossi, back and forth. It's inconclusive. Now we're going to discuss and study together one of the proofs, one of the passages. It's in Shabbat 87b. You have it on the source sheet. Let's read it together. A reminder, the translation is not mine. And the bold in the translation is the actual translation of the words. And the unbold text is the interpretation, explanation of the words as submitted by the author. This is downloaded from Sefaria.org. Okay, let's get straight into it. Amalei Rav Chavivi Mechazuno, the Rav Ashi, Rabbi Chavivi from the town of Chazuno said to Rav Ashi as follows: Toshima, come and hear the following proof that I want to bring you. The Torah says in a verse, Vayihi b'chodesh harishon, and it was in the first month, b'shana hashenit, in the second year, be'echad lachodesh, on the first month, on the first of the month, hukam hamishkan, the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was erected, was built for. That's a bit of a complicated way of saying as follows. On the first of the month of Nisan, which is the first month, in the second year after the Jews leave Egypt, the Mishkan was finally erected. Here's the background. We know that Moshe on Mount Sinai, which we're discussing about Mount Sinai, one of the laws he was taught was that the Jews have to build a Mishkan, build a tabernacle. So when he came down the mountain for the final time after Yom Kippur, he gives the instruction to build this Mishkan. And for many weeks and months, the Jewish people are contributing all kinds of materials and donations to have it built. And then a team is assembled to actually construct and build everything. And within a few months, it was ready to be built. But God said, you have to wait. Wait for a special day when we're going to inaugurate the Mishkan. And he decides it's going to be on the 1st of Nisan in the second year, meaning it's about 10 months, just under 10 months after the giving of the Torah. Okay. Now, let's go on a tangent for a moment. It's a side note, but it's very beautiful teaching, and that's how the Talmud works. Tana, it was also taught about that day, the 1st of Nisan in the second year when the Mishkan was built. On that day, 10 crowns were given or were taken, 10 crowns were celebrated, 10 major milestones on that day. What were they? The Talmud will now enumerate those 10 milestones. Rishon the Ma'aseh Breshis. First of all, it was a celebration of Sunday. Sunday happens to be the first day that God created the universe. So every Sunday, in a way, is an anniversary of the first day that God created the universe. One was probably extra special. The Sunday of the 1st of Nisan, the day the Mishkan was being inaugurated. First anniversary of the first day of the creation of the world. Rishon the Nisim. Secondly, it was the first time that the heads of each of the 12 Jewish tribes could offer a sacrifice in the temple. So after the 1st of Nisan, once the Mishkan is inaugurated, for the next 12 days, the heads of each tribe an inauguration sacrifice on behalf of their tribe in the Mishkan. The first one being on the first day, the 1st of Nisan. And that was an exciting moment. The first time we could actually offer sacrifices and perform the worship in the Mishkan. Who was it, by the way? Which tribe was the first? So he didn't go in by order of age of the original sons of Jacob. The first sacrifice on the first day was offered from the tribe of Judah, of Yehudah, and the head of the tribe was Nachshon ben Aminadav. Why was Nachshon ben Aminadav from the tribe of Judah given the first day to offer the sacrifice? You know who Nachshon ben Aminadav was? A very special person. His name itself is going to tell us more about him. He was the brother-in-law of Aaron HaKohen, the high priest. Aaron married Elisheva, the sister of Nachshon, the son of Aminadav. The story goes that when the Jewish people escaped Egypt, and after 7 days they arrive at the Yam Suf, at the Sea of Reeds, and they're stuck. They can't travel forwards. The Egyptians are behind them. What should they do? And we know there was a panic. Everyone had a different opinion. Let's go back. Let's fight. What should we do? But God had already instructed to move forward, to carry on. But there was a sea in front of them. One person, Nachshon, and he wasn't anyone important at that time. He happened to be a brother-in-law of Aaron, but he wasn't given any special position here. He says, if we have to continue, we have to listen to God and continue. Stop bickering. Stop figuring out what to do. Don't plan on fighting. Don't plan on retreating. Don't plan on praying. Just go. So Nachshon ben Aminadav jumps into the Reed Sea. Jumps. That was a matter of self-sacrifice. I hope he could swim. But either way, he's on his own and there's a strong current. What could happen to him? But he knew that if God instructs that way, he did so. And the Talmud says, the tradition is, the water was getting up to his neck. He was possibly almost drowning. And at that moment, God split the sea. And then everybody could cross on dry land. Nachshon comes from the word nachshol. Nachshol, the fiery, fierce waves of the ocean. He jumped into there without being afraid, following the word of God. And from then on, he became a very prominent person, somebody that symbolized a foot soldier of God. God says it, you do it without any questions asked. And it's because of that great sacrifice and dedication that symbolizes the bedrock, that symbolizes the cornerstone of what it means to be a Jewish person. It's too many of the other tribes excelled in other traits, excel in Torah study, excel in communal affairs, many other matters. But Nachshon ben Aminadav from the tribe of Judah excelled in sacrifice and absolute devotion to the word of Hashem. So they get the first sacrifice of the first day as a lesson to teach us that our relationship with Hashem and with the Torah begins with that kind of devotion. Afterwards, we can try to understand and explore and study and do and express our talents, but it has to begin with that devotion. Next, let's continue. Rishon LeKahuna. It was the first day that the Kohanim, the priests, would start to worship in the temple. You know that originally the Kohanim, the priests, were not intended to worship in the temple. Rather, the firstborns were supposed to. However, the firstborns eventually were punished because they participated in the construction of the golden calf. It's at that time that God says we're going to change the rites of worship in the temple from the firstborns to the tribe of Levi. The tribe of Levi includes the Kohanim, the priests, and the Levites. They did not participate in the construction of the temple, so they're going to be the ones that are going to worship in the Mishkan. The first time they worship is on the First of Nisan in the second year when the Mishkan was inaugurated. Rishon LaAvodah. It was the first day where actual worship could begin in the Mishkan. Rishon LiYerudat HaEsh. It was the first day that a fire descended from heaven. What is this fire descending from heaven? Listen to this. It's something very, very interesting, fascinating. In the Mishkan and in the temple, there was a mizbeach, an altar, upon which you offered the sacrifices and burned the animals, the slaughtered animals. There was a fire pit, logs of wood, and the Kohen, the priest, had to light a fire. But in addition to the Kohen lighting a fire, the Torah says, "Vatetze esh milifnei Hashem." A fire is also going to descend from heaven. God wanted that the fire of a heavenly fire, which was a miracle, and the human fire. And so that's the first time this heavenly fire comes down to burn the sacrifices on the Mishkan, which is an absolute miracle, and it must have been a wonderful spectacle to see that fire come down from heaven. What is it about this fire, though? What was the purpose of it? And why did it have to come from heaven? If you think about it, fire throughout Scripture is used by God as a metaphor for divinity, for holiness, for spirituality. The very first time that Moshe Rabbeinu encounters God is at the scene of the burning bush. The bush was on fire. It wasn't being consumed, but it's in the image of the fire that God reveals himself to Moshe. Later, when the Jews enter the desert and they have the Mishkan and they're camping and they're not sure when and where to go, the Torah says, the cloud of glory will show you by daytime and a of fire will direct you by nighttime. And throughout their stay in the desert, that pillar of fire always was suspended in the sky above the Mishkan. Now we have the fire coming down from heaven. And the Torah is very particular about telling us, Eish tamid tukad al mizbeach lo tichpeh. This fire has to be always burning on the mizbeach, on the altar. It can never be extinguished. It had to be everlasting fire, and also the fire coming down from heaven. What is it about fire? Fire is fascinating. Fire fascinates us. Maybe too much sometimes. It should get a little dangerous. Fire, when controlled, is an unbelievable source of fuel and of power. It gives warmth. It gives light. And the lesson that God is telling us, verse in Scripture that says, Ki Hashem Elokecha esh ochlahu. God is a consuming fire. The metaphor of God is fire. Because God is telling us that a measuring stick, if you're in a holy space, in a holy experience, is if your heart is enraptured by fire. You are in a state of passion, enthusiasm, and excitement. The opposite will be somebody who's apathetic, and somebody who's cold, and somebody who's only cerebral, but very rigid. And that is not where godliness, that's not where holiness is found. There's a beautiful story about the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was once lecturing to his students, and he told these students his famous teaching, which said, anything you see in life, if Hashem is making you see it, there's a lesson to learn from that. You're going on the street, you're in the store, you're going in the car, you're at home, you see something, there's a lesson to learn from everything. Everything that happens in the world is calculated by God. After that, the students were going home, and they saw a spectacle. It was in the middle of the winter, and the whole river was frozen, and they saw this, possibly a Christian, who was carving out a cross in the iced up river. it bothered them. Why do they have to see this? Why do they have to see this crust being designed in the icy river? And so the next day they came to school, to yeshiva, and they asked their teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, why did we see this? You said it's a lesson. And the Baal Shem Tov said, yes, there is a very important lesson over here. Torah is also compared to water. But what kind of water? Water which is warm, water which is fluid, water which flows, water which is flexible. That's where God's Torah is found. Water which is frozen, that's no longer God's Torah. That could be the opposite. And he said, when you're studying Torah, when you're doing a mitzvah, when you're connecting in a relationship, anything you're doing, if you're in a state of excitement and passion and heat, that's good. That's where God is. The opposite, that's not where God is. It's like when you have two kinds of children you're trying to work with. One is a child who's possibly not interested in the class or in the subject matter or in doing the right thing, but they have a very heated, passionate, excited character. You can work with that. There's someone to talk to. You have to channel that, you have to guide that, but there's someone to talk to. Versus a child who is really closed and really reserved and really cold and really disinterested and really apathetic, it's very difficult to get into their mind, into their heart. It's very difficult to get them moving. So the state of holiness, connection with Torah has to be always in a state of fire, in a state of excitement, happiness, and enthusiasm. Let's continue. It was the first time that when a sacrifice was offered, before the Mishkan was built, you offered a sacrifice, you could eat the meat any way you wanted. But here you had to eat the meat specifically in the Mishkan or in the camp of the Jewish people. Now it was sacred food and has to be eaten in a state of holiness. Rishon Lishkan Shechina. It was the first time that the Shechina, the presence of God, came down and descended upon the Jewish people. Remember, God came down Mount Sinai when he gave us the Torah. But then he left, and then we sinned. And ever since we sinned with the golden calf, the Shekhinah, that special presence of God, was no longer in this world. And God said, when you build the Mishkan one day, I'll come back. So now that they built the Mishkan, indeed God came back. And there was this special presence of God in the camp of the Jewish people once again. Rishon Levarches Yisrael. It was the first time that the Kohanim had the opportunity to fulfill their mitzvah of blessing the Jewish people. Every Kohen has a mitzvah. They're empowered by Hashem and instructed to give blessings to the Jewish people. The first time they could do that formally in the Mishkan was on that day. Now we know we do that ever since we no longer have the temple. We do that in the synagogues. In the temple, it used to be every single day. Ever since the Jews left Israel and in the exile into the diaspora, different customs emerged. Some still have the custom that the Kohanim do this every day in the synagogue. Some, more the Ashkenaz custom, do it only on festival days, on special days, because the blessing of the Kohen has to be in a state of great simcha. You have to be in a state of great happiness to give those blessings. Outside of Israel, in the exile, the assumption is that it's hard for a Kohen to master that kind of simcha. But on a festival, they're able to. Rishon Israel Abamas. Before the Mishkan was built, the Jewish people were allowed to offer a sacrifice on their own private altar. You could build in your backyard an altar made of stone, and you had your own barbecue over there. But once the Mishkan was built, if you wanted to offer a sacrifice to God, it could only be done on the altar, on the Mizbeach in the Mishkan. You couldn't do it in your own private Mizbeach. And finally, Rishon Lechadashim, it was the first of the months. It was Nisan. Nisan was proclaimed as the first of the 12 months. Those are the 10 special things that happened on that day that the Mishkan was inaugurated. Now remember, this is all a teaching of Reb Chavivi Mechozena, which is telling Rav Ashi. He's trying to drive home a point over here. His point is he wants to support one of the views of the rabbi, whether the Torah was given on the 6th or the 7th of Nisan. How are we going to flesh this out? This is what he says. Now you have to put your thinking cap on, because we're going to be figuring out calendars over here. So he says, on that day, on that year, the second year, we know the first of Nisan was on which day? On Sunday. We said that it fell out on Sunday, which was the first day of the week, the first day of creation. So the first of Nisan on the second year was a Sunday. Could we calculate from that when the first of Nisan would have been a year earlier, which day of the week? The answer is yes. The Ishtakad, a year earlier, the first of Nisan, Berevi b'Shabbos would be on a Wednesday. In other words, if you take a particular date of this year and you know it falls on, a year ago, 4 days off. If this year was Sunday, last year was Wednesday. How do we know that? How does that work? So the Talmud explains. The Tanya, for it was taught, Acherim Orim, there's an opinion that says as follows. Ein bein atzeres la'atzeres. Ve'ein bein Rosh Hashanah l'Rosh Hashanah. Shavuot of one year to Shavuot of the other year. Or Rosh Hashanah of one year, Rosh Hashanah to the other year. Or any date for that matter between one year and the other year. There's always a 4-day difference of the week. Obviously, it's a year later, it's 50 plus weeks later, but also on the days of the week, it's going to be a 4-day difference. And if it's going to be a leap year in the Jewish calendar, Chamisha, then it's going to be a 5-day difference. I hope you're going to follow this. I made a little chart on the source sheet, so look at the bottom and you'll see. The Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar, not a solar calendar. A solar calendar has 365 days. But the moon doesn't, 12 cycles of the moon is not 365. 12 cycles of the moon is actually 354 days. The moon's orbit is approximately 29 and a half days. Times 12 is 354. So as you can see, look, I've divided in the months. Every month is either 29 or 30 days. Normally it's perfectly staggering. So in a classic year, you have 6 of each. 6 months that have 29 days, 6 months that have 30 days, and altogether you have 354 days. And if you look at the second column, you'll see 354 days is what? Is 50 weeks and 4 days. So a date on a particular day this year, the same date next year will be what? 50 weeks later, plus 4 days. So you go 4 days. So if the first of Nisan in the second year was a Sunday, when would the first of Nisan be in the previous year? Minus 4 days. Shabbat, Friday, Thursday. So you know now that last year, the first of Nisan fell on a Wednesday, right? Keep that in mind. That's going to be one piece of information. But just to continue with calendar study, the regular year we discussed. What about a leap year? What is a leap year? In the secular calendar, in the solar calendar, a leap year is just one extra day every 4 years. Because we had actually this year, February 29th, because you got to count the solar cycle. But in the lunar calendar, it's different. A leap year is when you add an entire month to the year. And in the Jewish calendar, it's the month of Adar. There's Adar 1 and Adar 2. Why are we adding, and when are we adding an entire month to the year? So the calculation is as follows. Think about this. Even though the Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar, the Torah is also very particular that it stays somewhat in sync with the solar calendar as well. We know this because Pesach has to always be in the spring. Now, if you just follow a lunar calendar, 12 lunar cycles, and it'll be 354 days, 11 days shorter than a solar cycle, after a few years, you keep losing 11 days. Pesach is no longer going to be in the spring. It's going to fall back to the winter, then fall back to the fall, then fall back to the summer. It'll be all over the place. Similar to, for example, Ramadan. By the Muslims, they only follow lunar calendar. Ramadan changes its time every single year, and over years, it changes its seasons as well. But the Torah wants the Jewish calendar to be a lunar calendar, but that fits in with the solar cycle. But if you're losing 11 days every year in your calendar, how do you match it up? So the rabbis came up with the following system. Every 19 years, we're going to add 7 leap years. Every 2 or 3 years, in other words, is a leap year. Think about this. Over 19 years, and you're losing 11 days each year, how many days have you lost over 19 years? 11 times 19, well, 10 times 19 is 190. 209. 209 days over 19 years. Well, if you're adding 7 leap years, 7 leap months over those 19 years, and the month could be 30 or 29, 7 times 30 is 210, 7 times 29 is 203, you can understand now that the 209 days that we lost, we're catching up almost that amount of days with our leap year system. And now if it's a leap year, so there's an extra 29 days, an extra 4 weeks in 1 day. So if a regular year is always 4 days further for the next year, a leap year will be 5 days further for the next year because we added an extra day. I hope you process that. So in summary, we know that the first of Nisan in the second year was a Sunday, which means in the first year when the Jews left Egypt, the first of Nisan was a Wednesday. Okay, let's go further. If the first of Nisan in the first year, when they're still in Egypt, was a Wednesday, and Nisan has 30 days, so when would be the first of Iyar the next month? 4 weeks and 2 days later, it would be on a Friday. The first of Iyar was a Friday. V'reish Yarchad Sivan, when will be the first of the next month, the month of Sivan? Iyar has 29 days, so add 4 weeks and 1 day. Rosh Chodesh Sivan would be on Shabbat. Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Wednesday. Rosh Chodesh Iyar, Friday. Rosh Chodesh Sivan, Shabbat. Okay, hold on a minute. If Rosh Chodesh Sivan was on a Shabbat, and then the Torah was given the next Shabbat, what date would that be? If the previous Shabbat was the first of Sivan, then the next Shabbat is the 8th of Sivan. Hold on a moment. The 8th of Sivan, that's like nobody. The Talmud says, Kasha ben Rabbi Yosef ben Rabbanan. That's a question on all opinions. Rabbi Yosef and the Rabbanan. With the leap years, I understand. We'll have a chance to talk about it more. Rabbi Yossi says that the first of Nisan was Sunday, so Shabbat was the 7th of Sivan. The rabbis say it was a Monday, so the Torah was given on the 6th of Sivan. But here we have a proof based on our calendar calculations that the first was a Shabbat, in fact, so the Torah was given on the 8th of Sivan. That is according to nobody. How do we make sense of that? So the Talmud is going to say a simple answer that could work both for Rabbi Yossi and both for the rabbis. Talmud says, the Rabbi Yossi shiva chaserin avod, the Rabbanon shmoina chaserin avod. I'll say this concisely, and then we'll move on. Our system that we said that the year has 354 days based on 6 months of 29 days and 6 months of 30 days, and it's the same each year, that was the opinion that we built on to raise our question. The Talmud Answers, not everyone agrees with that. Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis actually disagree with that. Rabbi Yossi will tell you that there were actually 7 months of 29 days and only 5 months of 30 days, which means the year was a day shorter. If the year was a day shorter, then you don't rewind 4 days, you rewind 3 days. So if the first of Sivan, first of Nisan in the second year is a Sunday, then the first of Nisan in the previous year won't be a Wednesday, but will be a Thursday, which will have the first of Sivan, the Sunday, which he already told us, and the Shabbat was given on the 7th. The rabbis will tell you, actually, there were 8 months of 29 days and only 4 months of 30 days, which means that there's 2 days left of the year, less of the year, which means you don't minus 4 days, you minus 2 days. So if the first of Nisan in the second year was a Sunday, then the first of Nisan in the first year was not a Wednesday, as we previously thought, was not a Thursday, as Rabbi Yossi suggested, it was a Friday. And therefore the first of Sivan 2 months later was a Monday, not Shabbat, not Sunday, but Monday, which means Shabbat, the Torah was given the next Shabbat on the 6th of Sivan. So briefly, that's a resolution to tell us how this teaching about the first of Nisan of the second year when they built the Mishkan can no longer prove or disprove the opinions of Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis about when the Torah was given and when was the Rosh Chodesh, the first of Sivan. The Torah was given on Shabbat, but it may have been the 6th, it may have been the 7th of Sivan, and it's inconclusive. And with that, we conclude the first part of today's class, that first text. I have 2 more texts that I want to study. I hope I'm not being too ambitious. Let's see how much we can accomplish. Everyone hanging in there? Miriam, I'm glad you're enjoying the class. Me too. Let us continue now on page 2 of the source sheet, the next passage of Talmud from Shabbat 88a. A very beautiful teaching on the same topic about the giving of the Torah. Now, we're shifting away now from the calendar and the chronology and the dates, and now we're going to a beautiful teaching. Dorash Hahu Galila Alei de Rav Chisda. There was a scholar from the Galil, from northern Israel, a Galilean. Now remember, after the temple is destroyed and the Jewish people are exiled, some Jewish people remain in Israel, but no longer is Jerusalem the capital. So all these schools and academies start to flourish and grow all over other parts of Israel. Yavna, for example, is a famous one. But the north becomes a hub of academies and Torah scholarship. So there was one Galilean scholar who was standing and lecturing. Rav Chisda was sitting right underneath him. And he said as follows, a beautiful teaching, but we have to understand it very well. Brich Rachamana, blessed is God, Do Yohav Uriyam Tlisoi, who gave us a threefold Torah, Le'am Tlisoi, to a threefold nation, Al Yidei Tlisoi, through a third person, B'yom Tlisoi, on the third day, B'yarcha Tlisoi, on the third month. The magical three. The Torah is like three, was given to a nation like three. Well, the Torah is like three. Why? So you know there's three parts of the Torah. Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Three parts of scripture. So the Torah has three books in it. Or some say that the Torah has three different kinds of mitzvot, of laws. There are edut, there are testimonial laws, like the festivals, we commit something. There are mishpatim, rational laws, civil law, do not steal, do not be jealous. And then there's mishpatim, the laws that we just do not understand, we don't know the reason for them. So the number of threes, they categorize the Torah as three. It was given to a nation of three. Why are the Jewish people a nation of three? Well, we're divided by Kohen, Levi, and Israel. We have three different types of Jewish people, a Kohen, a priest, a Levite, or an Israelite. Or we exist in the merit of our three patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It was given by Moses is number three also. Why? He was the youngest of three children. Aaron, the oldest brother, then Miriam, the oldest sister, then Aaron, and then himself. It was given on the third day. What do you mean the third day? It was given on Shabbat, the 6th of Sivan, but the third day after the Jews received the instruction to separate from their wives in a state of the spouses in a state of holiness. We learned about this last week. On Thursday and Friday, they separated from their spouses, and on Shabbat, the Torah was given. The third day after the separation, the Torah was given. In the third month, in the month of Sivan. A beautiful teaching. Something is going on over here. What is it about the number three? Why is this Galilean emphasizing and highlighting the number three? I mean, it wasn't really it was the 6th of the month, but the third from the command of separation. Moshe described as number three. The Jewish people as number three. Maybe we're 12. We have 12 tribes. The Torah is number three. Maybe Torah is five books of Moses. Or you can come up with any number if you wish. Yet the sage is highlighting the number three. What is special about the number three? I want to share with you about this special number because it really explains to us the depth of the giving of the Torah, of the Jewish people, and the gift that we received from Hashem. Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, says in Kohelet, the book of Ecclesiastes, the wisest of all men, he says, V'hachut hameshulash lo bimheira yinater. A three-ply cord cannot be easily severed. Simply meaning, you have a string, it's one string, you have two strings, a little harder, but you could tear it. You have three strings bunched together, now you can no longer tear it. Now it's a very strong cord. So three strings is a sign of great strength. They say once is a fluke, twice is a coincidence, third time is a pattern, is a trend. The number three, doing something three times, having three of something, three successes, puts a kind of strength. After you've done something three times, you're more familiar, now you're getting good at it. So the number three symbolizes that kind of strength. And so we want to cement that we have with the Torah, or that we have with God. And so it's symbolized in the number three. You're studying Talmud once tonight. It's going to be in one ear and hopefully not entirely out the other ear, but so you're going to have to listen a second time. Third time, I can imagine the third time you're going to really internalize this. So if you have time, you watch it the third time. You can watch it more as well. Somewhere the sages teach us you should study your Torah 100 times, 101 times, but the third time is very special. That's one idea of the number three. But I want to share with you another idea, and we're going to get into the Zodiac. You can see on your source sheet, I've printed a chart of the Zodiac. The Zodiac, the sky that's divided into 12 parts, 30 degrees, each of those parts representing the 12 months, the cycles, the orbits, and we have those constellations, those patterns in the skies in each part of those 30 degrees, and we get the 12 shapes, which are the 12 Zodiac. Many ask often, is the Zodiac a Jewish concept? Of course it's a Jewish concept. It exists. Look at the sky, you'll see the stars. Have a good telescope, you'll see the whole Zodiac. What about all the meaning of all the constellations? And Are we influenced by that? Is it real? Do we believe in that? Are we bound by that? If I'm Virgo or if I'm Scorpio, does it mean I'm this kind of person, that kind of person? The answer is as follows. Yes, the constellations do have an influence on the world here. The Talmud says that many, many times. In fact, one of the earliest books called Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, maybe authored by Adam Harishon, maybe authored by Avram Avinu, it has a whole section dedicated to the constellations, to the Zodiac, and the kind of influence that it has. 12 constellations correspond to 12 months, correspond to the 12 tribes, correspond to 12 different senses of the body, sight, hearing, tasting, motion. It's fascinating to study that. And the Talmud has examples. If you're born in the following constellation, which is in a certain month or a certain day of the week, then you're going to be this kind of person. And if you're born on another day of the week, you're going to be that kind of person. We have these teachings in the Talmud at great length. At the same time, we also believe that although we are influenced by these constellations that govern our life, we're not controlled by them. We're not 100% subjected to their influence. We can also transcend. As we say, En Mazal Yisrael. There are no constellation forces that govern us. They influence us, but they don't determine our life. Famous example. Avram Avinu, we know, didn't have any children for a very long time. He was very upset with his wife Sarah. The second wife, he had children, but he couldn't have children with Sarah. And at one point, God wants to give him the promise of the land of Israel, and the promise is going to be the father to a great Jewish nation. And the Torah says, "Say achutza, go outside and look at the sky. And you see how many stars there are? Well, you're going to have more descendants than all of those stars." And the Talmud tells us it's not just look at the sky, but actually God raised Abraham to the stars outside of the hemisphere to have him look at all of those stars. What does that mean? What do you mean he raised him? I mean, it might mean literally, maybe God took him he was the first person in space. Maybe that's possible. But there's a beautiful teaching that the Talmud says like this. Avram turns to God and says, God, I don't have any children. But not just that. I see my stars. I see my Zodiac constellation. I'm destined not to have any children from Sarah. We're not going to father and build the Jewish nation. Your promise is impossible. So God tells Abraham, Say mitzvagnunot shelcha. It's true. That's what your Zodiac is telling you. Believe that. Transcend that. Recognize that you're able to be more and bigger than that. You're not controlled by that. If you're able to break out of that in your mind and in your heart, then you're able to break out of that in the rest of you. You're stuck in that mode. You can believe in more. And if you believe in more, you'll be able to achieve more. And in fact, he had the child Yitzchak, who then became the next generation in giving the birth to the Jewish people. So we're told that that's the idea. Now, if we look at this chart, we have the 12 months on the left side, Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av. We have the Zodiac, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo. And we have the Hebrew Jewish names as they are in the original Jewish sources, Tleh, Shor, Tamim, right? The sheep, the ram, the bull, the twins, etc. I want to deal with the number 3, right? The 3 first months of the year, Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, which is the journey of the receiving of the Torah, because Nisan, we leave Egypt, we become a free people. Iyar, we're working hard to develop ourselves, to ready ourselves to receive the Torah. We're trying to find our identities as the Jewish people, to break away from slavery and to carve out an identity of a free, determined people. And then Sivan, the 3rd month, we actually receive the Torah. Those 3 constellations of those 3 months will also map out the pattern of the receiving of the Torah, the pattern of how to enter a relationship with God, with the Torah, and with all of our loved ones down here. How does a relationship work? 2 people want to come together, you and your spouse, you and your loved one. The sheep. The sheep model is a model of a person who's very submissive, very docile, very passive. The sheep doesn't assert themselves. The sheep follows, gives up their identity towards somebody else. So if you have 2 couples together and each one is a sheep, well, that's going to be a pretty lame relationship. Neither one of them want to assert themselves. Neither one of them want to express an opinion. Neither one of them they're each waiting for the other, and Nothing is working over here. That's not going to work. So often you'll have in a relationship one dominant partner and one bull, one Taurus, one bull, and one sheep. And it could work because they're getting along. There's always one opinion that they all agree on. But that's not a really good relationship either. It's not very healthy. One person's calling the shots. The other one has no opinion. The other one says, it doesn't matter my opinion. I submit to yours. Whatever you say, I do. What kind of that? It's true there's no fighting. There's no fighting because one of them doesn't exist in the relationship. Now imagine if there are two bulls in this relationship. Yeah? You want me to exist? You want me to retain my identity, share with you my ideas, my beliefs, my opinions, my thoughts, and each one of them says that? Well, now you have two bulls in the China store. Could you imagine two partners in a relationship, each one asserting themselves, battling for opinions and their ideas and their way of life? That's not going to be a very healthy relationship either. It's not going to work. Neither one is going to ever agree with the other. It's going to be full of fighting. It's like they say, the story, the joke, when the IRS officer came to the door of a home one day and he hears a lot of screaming behind the door. And the husband opens the door and he says, how can I help you? And the officer says, I'd like to talk with the master of the home. And the husband says, well, you've got to wait a minute because we're currently in the process of trying to figure out who that is. So hold on. What's a true relationship? When two people come together, it's characterized in the third month, Gemini, Tomim, twins. The twins is the powerful formula. What's a twin? A twin is not me. My twin is another person. When I look at you, I'm looking at another person. But you are really also a reflection of me. You're my same biological DNA. So I see in you, I see me, and you see yourself in me. A twin, it's such a powerful formula, is to recognize in a relationship the other exists, and the other is an important person as an individual and has their life thoughts and their opinions, and they have their own character. But it's not that my character and my persona is in conflict with theirs. My persona, me as an identity, is only complete together with them. And their identity is only complete together with me. When two people can recognize, I don't have to submit myself and give up of myself to connect with you. It won't help to fully assert myself because I will never be able to connect with you. We're going to be butting heads with each other. But if I can recognize that I am a person and I have a place in this relationship, but I also recognize that without you, I am less. And with you, I am more. And then we are more. That is the perfect relationship. That is symbolizing the number 3. The number 1 is like the marriage with the bull and the sheep. Yes, there's always oneness, always unity, because only one opinion, because one person here has been swallowed up, doesn't exist, they're invisible. The number 2 represents, it's always two opinions. It's always 2 voices. They're both screaming at each other, barking at each other. Each one is fighting for their territory. 3 represents a resolution. 3 represents that you have the 2 pieces, the 2 partners, but they're both transcending each other to a third entity and connecting in a higher way. And this way, the 2 of them can enter into a true, genuine, everlasting, healthy relationship with each other. That is the number 3. That's why the Torah was given on the 3rd month, on the 3rd of the month, by the 3rd person, the 3rd Torah. We connect with Hashem, we connect with the Torah, we connect with our loved ones in the way of number 3. That is a deeper interpretation of this teaching of the Galilean. That concludes the second of 3 passages I want to study together with you today. One more passage we're going to study together. This is a super, super interesting one. It's also on Shabbat 88a. Let's do this. I'm on the last source of page 2 in the source sheet. Vayisyatzvu b'sachtis hahar. The passage describing what happened in the days before the giving of the Torah, the verse says that the Jewish people were standing beneath the mountain. Not at the foot of the mountain, but beneath the mountain. How do you stand beneath a mountain? And in fact, it doesn't say Tachat tahar, it says tachtit tahar. Tachtit tahar implies not just at the bottom of the mountain, but almost inside the mountain. What does it mean we're standing inside Mount Sinai? It's a strange word. So the Talmud has a very famous, beautiful, deep commentary. Amar Rav Avdimi bar Chama, bar Chasa. Rabbi Avdimi, the son of Chama, the son of Chasa. He says, Melamed, this is teaching us. Think deep. Shekafa Kadosh Baruch Hu Aleim Esahar Kagigis. That God uprooted Mount Sinai and suspended it over the heads of the Jewish people, Kagigis, like a barrel, like a vat, like a tub. Not that the mountain was a complete solid mountain, and we're often taught that in school, and God said, when I drop this, no. It was like a barrel inside, which is why the Jewish people were standing beneath the mountain and almost inside the mountain. It was the word kafa that he suspended also comes from the word kippah. Kippah is like this is a kippah. It's a dome. Kippah is a dome. The mountain became like a dome over the Jewish people. V'omar lehem, and God told them, if you guys are ready to receive the Torah, mutav, very good, I'll return the mountain back to its place. You'll all be happy and healthy. V'im la'av, but if you choose not to receive the Torah, sham tehek voratchem, you're going to be buried right there, right here, and now I'm going to drop this mountain on you. That is the teaching. Why does that kill them if it's only a dome? They'll be inside the mountain. Why would they die? Wait, there's more to this teaching. We're going to try to get deep and understand it. So far we know that God seemingly coerced the Jewish people into receiving the Torah. He says, here it is, I've got this mountain over your heads. You better take it for your own good. So Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Rav Acha, the son of Yaakov, interjects and he says, really? Is that what happened? Wow. You know what we can suggest now? Mikan, from here, we can suggest Mador Rabba Lo Raisa, that the Jewish people have a strong objection, a strong argument against God, against the Torah. Here we get to the title of the class, Objection, Your Honor. You're telling me God forced the Jewish people into receiving the Torah? So how does this work? So now the Torah says a law, don't do this or do this. And now you disobey the law. So God says, I'm going to punish you. Hold on a minute. How can you punish me? Well, it says on the Torah, but I never agreed to receiving the Torah. You said you're going to receive the Torah. Yeah, but you forced me into it. The law is if you force someone into something, they're not held liable for that. That's the law in Jewish law and in civil law. If God forced us to receive the Torah, we essentially would have said, we're not interested, but you're forcing us. You can't hold us liable to punish us if we violated the law of the Torah. We never wanted it to begin with. And so Rav Acha says, in fact, that is the case. That a Jewish person who disobeys the law and God wants to punish, he can turn to God and say, God, I'm sorry, you are forced into it. I'm not interested. You can't punish me. Is that so? Then how much are we really committed and how much are we really liable for the Torah nowadays? We can always say, God, we never really originally accepted it willingly. Amar Rava, so Rava says, okay, good point. However, Afal Piken, nonetheless, even though what you're saying is a good point, Hadar Kiblu b'mei Achashverosh. All that applies until the time of Purim. The story of Purim, if you recall, which is the time where Haman and Achashverosh tried to commit a genocide against the Jewish people, this occurs between the first and the second temple. So this is about 800 years after the giving of the Torah. In the desert for 40 years, then for a few centuries they have the Mishkan, tabernacle in certain places. Then for 410 years is the first temple, the destruction, they go to Babylon, then Persia takes over, the Purim story. 800 years later, during the Purim story, at that point the Jewish people re-accept the Torah willingly, voluntarily. How do we know this? Up until then, you could say that they were forced into it and they always have an argument against God, we can't be punished. But at that time, they re-accepted willingly. How do we know? Because the Megillah says, we read it on Purim, the Megillah says, Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim. Kimu means they fulfilled the laws of the festival. Kiblu means they established the festival. So the Jews fulfilled the laws of the festival of Purim and they established the festival of Purim as a festival day. The words are out of order. First kiblu, first you establish the day as a festival, and then kiblu, then you observe the law. Why is it saying kimu and then kiblu? So the Talmud says, Rava teaches, kimu masha kiblu kvar. It means now they're accepting and now they're practicing the Torah that they already received and established many years earlier, 800 years earlier by the foot of Mount Sinai. Then maybe they were coerced into accepting it, but now they're accepting it willingly. And so Rabbi Rava says, ever since the Purim story, from then on, which includes me and you till today, we no longer have that excuse to tell God we were into it. No, now our ancestors during the Purim time accepted the Torah willingly, and now we're all brought into the Torah story. We have to fulfill the laws. That is how our lives are defined. Very interesting passage. Let me ask you a question. Rav Avdimi just told us that the Jewish people were forced into receiving the Torah. God suspended the mountain over them. If you're going to accept it, good. If not, I'm throwing this on you. There you're going to be buried. Question. Don't we all know? We were taught from day one in school. We say this every single year. That when God went around to offer the Torah to all the nations of the world, each one of them said, no, we're not interested. And when God came to the Jewish people, do you want the Torah? What did we say? Yes. Naseh v'nishma. We're in. We accept. We'll do all the laws, then we'll study all the laws. We accepted it. We're the only nation that accepted it. God didn't force us into it. What is saying that we were forced into it? Why did God suspend the mountain over our heads if He already said that we accept? If God's already forcing us, why didn't He force any of the other nations? Why only forced us? What does this mean? This is a question that many of the commentators ask, and I want to share a few answers that really illuminate this passage and set a tone for what it means to receive the Torah that was given on Mount Sinai. One commentary says something interesting. When the Torah consists of two parts, Torah shebichtav and Torah shebal peh, the written law and the oral tradition, that which it says in the text, and that which was passed on orally from God to Moses from generation to generation. In the written law, there's only so many laws. The oral tradition, there's many more laws, many more caveats, many more things that were added, and it's all recorded in the Talmud. When the Jewish people said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we accept, the Medrash says they were giving their acceptance to the written law. The 5 books of Moses, we accept. The Tanakh, we accept. They never intended to accept all of the oral tradition. That was a bit much. That's going to make life way too difficult. We're going to have to study hard and extrapolate the law from interpreting the text, and then many more laws will be added. That's too much for it. But God wanted us to accept the oral tradition as well. So God said, I'm suspending this mountain here upon you. You see this mountain? I want to tell you something. This mountain is being dug out, right? Dug out like a tub, like a barrel. God is teaching you. If you want to get to the essence of a really good life, a really meaningful life, you cannot be satisfied with an easy, artificial, superficial, convenient life. Yes, we do sometimes instinctually want that kind of convenient, superficial life, but you won't live truly, you won't live wholesomely that way. To live a really good life, a meaningful life, you've got to dig deep. Dig deep into your own life. Dig deep into your partner, your spouse, your loved ones. Dig deep into your work. Dig deep into the world around you. You've got to live deeply, which means you've got to work hard to get there. But if you don't do that, you'll always remain a very surface level, shallow life. You won't get enough out of that. You'll never live the life you were intended to live or that you truly wanted to live. So God suspended the mountain was a message to them. Mountain is dug out. I'm telling you, you should want to accept the oral tradition as well. You should want to live a life where you're committed to dig deep in all of the laws that I give you to be able to get to the heart and soul of what the Torah says and what your life can truly be. That's one beautiful explanation. Here's another explanation. And then I'm going to add one third and final one for tonight. The second explanation is that if you look at the text, when the Jews say Na'aseh v'nishma, God offers them the Torah and they say, yeah, we're in, we accept. That was said in a response to Moses comes down the mountain, tells the Jewish people, God wants you as a nation. God wants to give you the Torah. And if you will accept the Torah, then the following will be your reward, and you'll get all kinds of blessings. So the Jewish people say, sure, Naseh v'nishma, we're in. What did they give acceptance to? They accepted a Torah that was filled with promises of rewards and blessings. God says, I'm glad you accept. You think that's what life is about. You think you're supposed to, it's a virtue always just to do the right thing, do a good thing because of the reward involved. The teaching in the Mishnah says, don't be a servant that serves the master because you're getting a reward. Be the servant that serves the master because it's the right thing. So God therefore places the mountain to pressure them and to say, I want you to accept the Torah even if there's no reward, even if there's no blessing, but it's because it's the right thing, which is a very important idea that a lot of people and even communities today get confused about this. If you go to school and even as an adult and you're studying about if you do this, then you get this reward, you get Gan Eden, you get heaven, you get this. It's true, but it's not why you should be doing what you're doing. It's not mature. Children, Maimonides says, children, you promise them with a gift. Study Torah, do a mitzvah, I'll give you a gift. A little older, I'll give you some money. A little older, I'll buy you a car. An adult should never think, if I do this, what will I get? That's not worshiping God. That's not connecting with God. That's worshiping oneself. What's in it for me? Mature spirituality is saying, what is the right thing to do that I want to do because it's the right thing? As Maimonides says, you do the truth because it's true. That's why God suspended the mountain, to pressure them into recognizing the value of doing the right thing for the right reason. And now I want to share with you one final resolution and explanation about this passage. We're emotional people, emotionally volatile people. Sometimes we're more in the mood. Sometimes we're excited. Sometimes we're in a good mood. Sometimes we're passionate. And sometimes it can happen like this. It can happen, you wake up and I'm not in the mood. I'm not so interested. That's what happens all the time to us. So it could be with your partner, your loved one. You ask yourself, you're living with your loved one, you're connecting, you may be living with each other for many years. And then one of them says, let's get married. And they say, why do you have to get married? We love each other, we're with each other. No. Everything important in life, you don't want to just rely on the emotions of love and interest, but you want to also cement. You want to seal the deal in a very forceful, enforceable way. Why? Because I know now you're excited. I know now things are good, things are rosy, you love me, times are good, we have money, you have a good job, things are going well, it's quiet in the home, so everything's working out. There may or will come a time where it won't be like that. Strain, maybe there won't be some money, maybe it'll be a little chaotic. Will you still be as in? If you were only into me because of your ahava, because of your love, what happens when, not every day I love you. I like you every day, but not every day I love you. What about the days I have to respect you, but I don't love you? Are you still in? So we have to tie the knot. We have to tie the knot in a forcible way that says, no matter what, with you I'll be until the day we die. And that's how it is with anything that we do in life. A lot of times we make decisions in moments of inspiration. We're inspired about something, we're into something, and we say, yeah, this is what we got to do. Decision for your own life and work, with your children, whatever it is. On the holidays and the festivals, you're in the synagogue, Yom Kippur, you know the thoughts you have on Yom Kippur during the Ilah. Oh, this year, you know what I'm going to be, you know what I'm going to do, you know who I'm going to help. I'm going to be a selfless, altruistic person of chesed, of kindness. I'm not going to pay attention to myself. I'm going to be there to serve others. What happens the next morning? A week later, Yom Kippur is over. The moment passed. It was a fleeting inspiration. Now what? What's going to force you to step up to the plate, to live your commitments, even when you're not as in the mood as you were when you made the commitment? It's a very powerful idea. What's the accountability over here? So here, when God comes to the Jewish people and says, would you like to accept the Torah? I want to make you into my nation, a precious nation, and there'll be rewards, and I'll love you, you'll love me, we'll have a beautiful life together. overwhelmed them with love. He picked them up into a very high spiritual state. Of course, God, we're feeling it right now. I'm feeling it. I'm in it. I want to be with you. Great. Great. That's how all good resolutions, all good commitments should start, right? You choose your marriage partner, it should be when you're feeling the love. But then you got to protect that. For your sake and for their sake. So God puts the mountain over their head and says, listen here, times are good now. You're in the desert. I'm giving you manna from heaven. I'm giving you water coming out of a rock. Clouds of glory are protecting you. I brought 10 plagues. I split the sea. You were a slave nation. I brought all kinds of miracles, let you out of Egypt. It's rosy right now. And I'm glad you're into it. But one day it's not going to be so rosy. Maybe you'll enter the land of Israel. The miracles will stop. They'll have to work hard. Maybe you'll be exiled from Israel. You might be a persecuted nation. You might be killed. You might be harassed. You might not enjoy a peaceful time, a glorious time. What are you going to say then? You're going to turn your back on me then? Or are you still going to be into it? I'm putting the mountain over your head. Realize, even at times of great distress, of great threat, of great challenge and difficulty, of great hardship, you're still going to be into it? The Jewish people said, yeah. Yeah. When did they truly say yeah? When they suffered a persecution. 800 years later. Right? They went into Israel. Life was good, relatively. They built the temple. They had Jerusalem. They conquered and won wars. Everything was great. But when that temple was destroyed and they were exiled to Babylon, and millions of Jews were murdered, and now they're a nation back in exile, without their homeland, what was their reaction then? They could have walked away and said, I'm sorry, God. When it was good, we were there, but now you're not with us anymore, so we're out. At that time of Purim, says the Talmud, they reaccepted, recommitted to the Torah in a much deeper way. When life was challenged, when life was difficult, they said, we still want you. We want you no matter what. It's the greatest thing you can tell your marriage partner. You can tell them, I love you because of all the good things. I love you because of what you have and how you look and all the good characteristics. But the greatest love is to say, it doesn't matter money and the glitz and the superficial things that we have and the comforts and the conveniences, doesn't matter. Even though you have a good job. What I want to tell you is, let's say heaven forbid one day you have a job, I won't have a job. We won't have money. We'll barely have a roof over our heads. Nothing is going well in life. You know what is one thing that we'll still have? I'll still have you. If I have you, I'll always. That's the most powerful statement. That's what the Jews could not tell God at the giving of the Torah when they said Na'aseh v'nishma, because everything was going well in life. Only during the Purim story, they could turn around to God when they're being threatened by Haman, genocide for all the Jewish people, and tell God, doesn't matter, we still have you. And that is the most powerful acceptance of the giving of the Torah. Something to think about. Thank you for studying together with me. This was a fantastic class. We studied 3 beautiful passages of the Talmud. I've put some questions at the bottom of the source sheet, which you can review. Just helps you to review what we studied, or you can follow it again on the Facebook or on the YouTube. And we will continue next week, Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m., same. And I look forward to seeing you there. Invite all your friends. God bless you, and stay safe and stay happy.